It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Interesting bit of news coming out of Wisconsin. Evidently, in Wisconsin, they have figured it out. The brain trust there in the Republican-led state Senate in the state of Wisconsin, where their motto is forward, have come up with a solution to take us backward again. They have figured out how to solve the labor shortage. They figured it out. No, it's not about increasing wages to draw more people in the jobs. No, it's not about making those jobs better. No, it's not about better working conditions, not better health care benefits. None of those things. It's not about creating good family-sustaining jobs. Not about promoting ability of workers to join and form unions. None of that stuff. No. We're going to take those lazy kids and we're going to put them back to work. We tried the experiment. Some kids are just spoiled for work, getting a little too much education. See, that's a problem in this country. Got too many people who got themselves some education. Now they don't want to work. So what we do is we catch them early, make sure they don't get too smarty pants, and they get used to working hard, long hours, early. That's the key. Again, you go back to the past when they were fighting against labor law reform that would have taken children out of mines. It was one of the things that the wealth class of this country was saying. If you give people too much education, they'll be spoiled for work. They'll think they're better than working. So we can't put kids into schools. Got to keep them in the mines. Well, what the Senate in Wisconsin has done, they've passed a piece of legislation that, like I said, has figured out how to solve the quote-unquote labor shortage, especially for small businesses. This is about putting those lazy kids back to work. Because last week, the state Senate there in Wisconsin approved a bill that will allow 14 and 15-year-olds to work until 11 p.m. Yep, that's what they're doing. Currently, Wisconsin, like many states, like all states across the country, they abide by the federal child labor laws that are in the Fair Labor Standards Act that allow children under 16 years of age to work from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. from June 1st to Labor Day. What they're considering the summer months, when you don't have to get up the next morning and go to school. So they're saying, you know what? We're going to let 14 and 15-year-olds wake up at 7 o'clock, go do some work, and maybe they can work up until 9. Maybe. I think that's a bit much, but okay. During the school year, it's changed. It's 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. because you want the kids to get a good night's sleep. They're younger. They need a little bit more sleep. That seems reasonable. But no, not in Wisconsin. No, in Wisconsin, what they want to do, what this legislation will do, is it will allow the kids to wake up and on school days, get up at 6 a.m., get to work early, get a couple hours in before work, and then, after school, maybe they can work all the way till 9:30. When school isn't the next day, 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. Now, their belief is this is how they're going to fund tourism and all of the small businesses. Because, in their, bless their hearts, they did put a cap. You can't make companies making over $500,000. We can't let, the big corporations exploit children, just the little ones. Now, the bill would keep into place that these kids can only work 3 hours a day. And at least they've left that for now. 8 hours on school days for now, and 6 days a week. So 6 days a week, 3 hours a day. That's what they've come up with. The hotel and tourism people are all tingly in the panties, happy, thrilled. In fact, the Restaurant Association, very happy about it, except don't like some of the onerous regulations that come along with it. You can't have them using dangerous machines or running credit cards or things like that. Kind of young age, not a good thing. They're not thrilled. They want those kids, we need to put them to work. Obviously, the AFL-CIO in Wisconsin opposed to it, as am I. Now, look, I was somebody who, as a kid, I'm not against kids working. In fact, I wish we would bring some of those kid jobs back, like paper routes. Paper routes used to be for children. Yeah. Yep. You had the paper boys in the corner. That's what they used to do. When I was 8 years old, I got my first paper route. I was delivering the Cleveland Press. It was an evening newspaper. I'd come home after school. I'd get my papers together. I'd go out. I'd deliver them after dinner. Made a couple of bucks. At 9 years old, I then got a Cleveland plain dealer route. Got up a little bit early before school, went and delivered my newspapers, came home, did my homework, had dinner, went out and delivered the evening press. Not against that. Those are kid kind of jobs. But when you start talking about taking jobs that, well, adults should be doing, I got a problem with that. Because all you're really talking about doing is, hey, how can we lessen the working conditions? How can we exploit a workforce? And I'm against this. I'm against this in a pretty big way. But, I think the trend is going to go that way. You see other states like Oregon, for instance, evidently lets 14-year-olds work at McDonald's. And there are other places around the country that do as well. Am I against kids working? No. I do have a problem with the times. This is what they're supposed to be doing at this age is getting a good education, the best education they can. Maybe learning a little responsibility, a little work ethic. Good at that. I'm happy with that. But this a bit too far. And the reality is, this is just an opportune moment for them to roll back some of the New Deal era protections that kept kids out of the workforce. I tell my kids all the time, you got one chance to get an education. You got one opportunity to be in this moment and to take advantage of this opportunity. Get the best education you can. Yeah, work a little bit, save a little bit of money, do that stuff, understand what the job place is about. But this isn't your full-time existence, nor should it be. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out in Wisconsin, because if Wisconsin, whose motto is forward, ends up going backwards, how many other states are going to follow? I reached out to my state representative friend here in Pennsylvania, said, hey, anything like this on your docket? Not yet, is the response I got. So not yet. It is what it is. Now understand, we're blaming the workers for this. We blame the workers, their fault. They're too lazy to work. Or they won't work for the poverty wages. And understand, we do that in every vein. Everything we do, it's about blaming the workers. Look at what we're doing in education. We don't have enough teachers. We don't have enough support staff. So blame them. Don't blame the conditions. Don't blame the idiocy of our policies to keep these workers safe. Because understand, most of the bus drivers that I know are retired women who, it's a part-time job. It's always been that. And you've created an environment where you're not really doing everything you can do to keep those workplaces safe. I'll tell you, if I'm doing this as a part-time gig, need a little extra, what my grandmother used to call pin money, I'm not doing it. Not doing it. It's, again, a failure of leadership and policy. It's not to blame the workers. Now, over the weekend, saw Jack Dorsey, the CEO of Twitter, come out and claim and throw his hat into the ring that he believes hyperinflation is around the corner. And as I'm reading this story about Jack Dorsey, saying, hyperinflation is around the corner, because we know when hyperinflation comes. It's usually wartime. It's usually when a shock to the system happens, or you've got this massive supply chain gum up like we have right now. We've got really an unequal manufacturing world, where most of the manufacturing that's done in this world is done in China and Asia. And the finished products are stuck on ships waiting to get in. So we're blaming truck drivers because there aren't enough of them. They're lazy. They don't want to work. So instead of, this is beautiful. So instead of saying, how do we make the conditions better for truck drivers who will want to come into the trucking industry and not continue to have an industry where people live in their trucks like animals, basically sweatshops on wheels. How do we make the job enticing to want to draw people to it? Not what we're doing. What they're doing Here's the push. They're trying to get the age to get a CDL lowered from 21 down to 18. Now, let me ask you, think about your 18-year-old self. You really want an 18-year-old behind an 18-wheeler hauling 80,000 pounds down the road and telling them you can make as much money as you can while the wheels are turning? So as fast as you get to where you're going, you're going to make more money. Do you really want that scenario on your highway? The answer is no. At least I don't think it is. But. This is the direction that the trucking industry, the brain trusts, and the associations are pushing for. Got to lower that onerous age. You know, if you can join the military, you can drive a truck. And look, you know, there's a lot of argument. Say maybe it's 21 for a reason at this point. A lot of places that I remember wouldn't let you drive to or 23, and then you had to have years of experience. Now it's throw all of the safeguards and all of the rails off and barrel down the highway. Again, putting the responsibility onto those least able to shoulder it. And again, not doing the things that you need to do to make things better. So the argument is, well, we can't, the supply chain's gummed up, so hyperinflation is coming. And this is what Jack Dorsey is saying. Now, as I'm reading through this, I'm thinking, okay, Jack, let me get this straight. You see hyperinflation coming. And now understand, I don't think inflation is a bad thing. I think a little bit of inflation, not too bad. Especially if wages keep up with the rate of inflation and you end up making a little bit more than the cost of goods rising, especially if you've got stronger unions to demand better wages, hours, and conditions. I think it's a good thing. I go back to my grandparents who lived through the stagflation of the 70s, which made their mortgage payment that they took out in the 60s a joke. In fact, by the end of the 70s, the mortgage payment that my grandparents took out in the 60s was literally 1 day pay. 1 day's worth of pay was their monthly mortgage. So it helps debtors, and this is always the position. Depends on where you are and how inflation is going to affect you. If you're deep in debt, inflation is probably going to do pretty well for you because you took out money at a certain rate and a certain amount, and your wages are going to go up and you're going to pay that debt off faster. If you're someone who has a lot of money and you're holding on to it, inflation probably not going to be your best friend because you're not going to get. And as a country that is a debtor country, a little inflation might be a good thing, which is why I've been arguing that this obsession with holding inflation down, especially wage inflation, has really harmed the working class of this country. But we'll see if Jack's right. We'll see if hyperinflation is coming, not just for the U.S. He claims across the world this is coming. Now, the reason I bring this up is immediately my mind goes to everything that happens in this country gets blamed on working people. Everything that happens gets blamed on those who have the least power to deal with the situation. It's always, remember the housing crisis? It was all those people who took out mortgages they couldn't afford. It was the people's fault. It's the workers' fault. It wasn't the banks who changed their philosophy of, hey, can they afford to buy this house and have 20% down and be able, will we set them up for success? Or when they changed to, hey, in 5 years, when we repossess it from them, we'll have gotten all of our interest up front, and then we get to sell it again to some other sucker who's going to pay us 5 more years of interest. It's a win-win-win. Except what happened is a whole bunch of people couldn't afford it, and the whole thing collapsed because greed took over. But it was still those people's fault. I see this happening if Jack is right. If we do hit an era, a period of high inflation, I can see it coming. And mark it on your calendar that I said it today. This is going to turn around and be blamed on all of the striking workers who are demanding better wages, hours, and conditions. This is going to be put on all the people who marched out of jobs and said, no, we're not working in this service industry for crummy wages. We're not working without health security or retirement security. We demand better for ourselves and for our fellow workers. I guarantee you that the message would be, well, see, they got what they wanted. They wanted higher wages, and they got higher wages. And it ends up costing you, the consumer, it ends up costing you more. I can see this coming. As clear as day. Because this is their MO. Now understand, higher wages will raise prices a little bit. But understand, for the last 45 years, the wealth class of this country has gotten away scot-free. They have lined their pockets enormously off the backs of working people. You've got 45 years of raises that didn't get into people's pockets, now being demanded. People saying, look, we've worked for stagnant wages for way too long. We've worked for starvation wages way too long. Now is the time that you reward our work. You called us heroes and essential and all of those things during the pandemic, and now we demand to be treated as such. So, I'm looking into my imaginary crystal ball, and I'm going, if this happens, if we get inflation, it's all going to be blamed on the workers who are striking right now and those greedy unions. Because what the messengers at the top understand is it's so easy to divide the working class and to blame each other. Because we see each other. I saw a guy the other day. The guy has a sweater on that says, I work like crazy so the lazy can stay home. And I had to ask, I go, which lazy are you talking about? Are you talking about the 745 billionaires who pocketed an additional $2.1 trillion during the pandemic? Well, no. Huh? How do you not think that you're supporting them? Because he doesn't see them. What he sees is the person who's struggling to get by, who has to use the EBT card at the supermarket. What he sees are people who are struggling to get by because the jobs that they're able to get are poverty wage jobs. So it's easy to point at them. And he's also pointed at them by every right-wing media outlet on this planet, because it really is about dividing and conquering the working class. So when it comes to it, when we get to this moment, if we get some high inflation, who's going to be the blame. It's going to be those evil workers who have the audacity to think that they should be treated to reasonable wages, reasonable health care benefits, reasonable retirement security, and dignity. But that's just my thought. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe corporate America will say, no, our bad. We did this. Our greed and our obsession with more caused this crisis. Which side do you think is actually going to happen? Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break, right back. Stick around. Still listen to The Rick Smith Show.
More American than workers standing up, and the union gives a voice to win. On The Rick Smith Show.